Some say love is a winding road, carves a map through the darkest night. Some say love takes a heavy load, helps someone make the burden light, teaches you not to hold too tight. You and I have come a long way together. You and I got a long way to go. You don't have to ask me now and never, 'cause I'm already yours and you'll always be mine. Some say love is a fire that grows, bound to hurt when you let it go. Some say love is a choice we make, a holy vow we should never break. And maybe that's just the chance we take. You and I have come a long way together. You and I've got a long way to go. You don't have to ask me now and never, 'cause I'm already yours and you'll always be mine. You'll always be mine. You and I've come a long way together. You and I've got a long way to go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to HVAC Uncensored. You know, I always start this show off by showing love to those companies who help make this podcast possible. Guys, first and foremost, I want to say this. If you guys do not check out my friends over at the Service Business Mastery podcast, Tersh and Josh, you should. They have a great show as far as what they do. It's more business oriented. But I'm also saying this because we share a partnership, and that's going to be with Company Cam. And I'm going to get Claire back on from Company Cam, but she did an awesome podcast with those guys today, talking about some things in a better way than I can explain. Like I told you guys, every time that I go inside of Company Cam, I learn something different and more that this thing does. And I always keep looking at the wrong camera. And I learn more and more what this thing does, and it's amazing. It blows my mind every time I look at this thing, like, oh, it does this. Like, man, it does that. You guys know about the pictures and the organization and keeping it all off your camera roll and being able to save and categorize and organize your pictures for your business. You know that. And the sad part is I don't want to say sad part, because the best part is that is such a small piece of what they do. They make it so simple to be professional, to show your work to your customer. But now they also have these little widgets, and I can't wait to get Claire back on to be able to explain this way better than me. But I want you guys to check them out. You have little widgets you can put into your website, and the pictures that show up on your website can actually come from Company Cam, and has all these different things that it can help you when it comes to SEO and your website and your Google ratings and Google My Business and all that kind of stuff, which is very, very important if you own a business, run a business, and you understand how important those things are. So, guys, Company Cam is one of those companies that they just blow me away. They're amazing people over there, and what they provide is absolutely amazing. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse and go over, and I'm not going to read the read again because I've read it so much, But I do highly recommend that you guys go check out that podcast, the Service Business Mastery Podcast with Tersh Blishett and Joshua Crouch, two of my really good friends. And it was an amazing show today. And I will have Claire on this show to talk about the same topic because I really think people need to know about it. But remember, they do give a free 14-day trial. Free, no credit card, no nothing. You can try it free for 14 days. If you don't like it, hey, no harm, no foul. You don't like it, move on with your, with your life. You're good to go. If you do, if you go to companycam.com/HVAC Uncensored, they will give you 50% off your first 2 months for being a part of HVAC Uncensored Nation. All right. So please go check out my friends over at Company Cam. Next, but not least, guys, is Blue On, man. You know how much they've been on the podcast. I absolutely love these people, and I love what they do and the amazing things that they are giving to the trade. Like, they really, really give a shit about us in the field. And just think about all the free resources they give us. It's free. There's a lot of places that do these things, but they charge you for it. It's a monthly subscription. You got to be part of a big conglomerate. Or there's always a catch. And guys, there really is no catch with Blue On. It is 100% free. Tech support on any brand of equipment. Residential, commercial, industrial, refrigeration, they will help you in any way that they can, and they're slowly building up to have more resources, manuals for anything that you could find. Some aren't in there, but if you let them know, hey, you don't have this one, guess what? They know that, and they know somebody's looking for it. They will make sure that manual gets added. The tech support guys, we're slowly meeting them on here. They're all amazing guys with tons and years of experience. Mr. Peter, the CEO, is an amazing guy, wanting to give back to this community and really cares about how technicians think and how they feel and wanting to make their job easier on a day-to-day basis. Guys, now we talked about it. We've offered, that they offer it as a Blue On Pro member, which once again is free to get. It's free to be a Blue On Pro member. It takes literally 10 minutes of your time. You can order parts directly through that app. So if you get tech support, you find a manual, you're already in there. Go order that part through the Blue On app from your local supply house. We use this. It is absolutely simple. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you guys to do something I'm not doing myself. Order the part through my local Johnstone, same way I would. No phone call, no nothing. A few clicks of a button on my phone. I got the exact part we needed. It was ready to pick up, and what was even better, the guys at Supply House, they were like, Gil, this is so much easier. Like, it came up, we picked it, we know exactly what to get. The process was seamless. I was invoiced and billed just like I normally would. And by me doing that, now Blue On gets a little bit of a kickback. So now I can help them out for all the help they've given us. So I highly, highly suggest you guys go become a Blue On Pro member and start ordering your parts through the Blue On app. It is very, very simple. At least check it out. You can get quotes, all that kind of stuff. So guys, go download the Blue On app. It's a huge resource to have. I don't know what you're waiting for. Guys, we'll get on with the pledge. A great show tonight. I will say this is going to be more for you owners out there than it is technicians, but you guys should still listen as well. There's something available out there that a lot of us don't know about, and our lovely guest tonight is going to educate us on that so nobody misses out. All right? Let's sorry, I got the hiccups. Let's get into this pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless the United States, and thank you to all those men and women who defend it.
Five, four, three, two, one. Go. Welcome to the #1 rated HVAC podcast. If you're looking to grow in the HVAC industry, then you're in the right spot. Blue collar people talking about blue collar shit. Let's get better together. So turn up the volume, buckle your seatbelt, and let's welcome your host, Gil KV Jr.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the HVAC Uncensored Podcast. I am your host, Gil KV Jr. Happy to be here another Wednesday, another great show for you guys. I'm very interested on this. Obviously, you guys know, started my career off as a technician. I worked my way up into the management roles and running companies and stuff like that. And I still want to be the best manager, or whatever that I can be. And still learning things. And one of the topics we're going to talk about today is something that people need to be educated on. So you guys don't have to hear my mouth anymore. Guys, without further ado, if you can help me put your hands together to CPA, Miss Catherine Tindall.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here. So I guess I like to get started so that people know. Let them know a little bit about who you are and what you do, your expertise, along those lines.
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, I'm a CPA. I'm one of the partners at, I founded my firm a couple years ago. It's called Dominion Enterprise Services. We're a specialty CPA tax and tax credit firm. We do a mix of services, but, a little bit about the firm itself. I founded it really with the vision of we try to be a partner with businesses in a way that's going to, move American business interests forward. And, a big struggle that I see a lot of business owners have is around taxation and how do you minimize your taxes legally and how do you stay compliant with the IRS and all the, regulations and kind of nonsense that goes on as a business owner. So that's really, the focus of our practice. And my background is, my parents are both CPAs. It was kind of the family legacy business. And so I always knew I wanted to do a line of work that would really serve people in a meaningful way. And I found that in tax. So that's been my whole professional career. And we've built the firm up really as a specialty niche kind of boutique practice that's just really oriented about, how can we do the most for the business owners that we work with to really move the needle in their business through the tax work that we do. So that's a little bit
awesome.
about us.
So it's funny. Most of the people I talk to are second generation HVAC techs. You're second generation CPA. It was in your blood.
Yeah. And it's funny. I've got one brother and he does it too. So it's like, you can imagine what the Thanksgiving talk is for all the in-laws and stuff, like all like people's wives and stuff. Cause it's like, we're just like talking about taxes.
I thought you were going to say you have that one brother who's not, and then he's you guys are talking about work and he's
we talked him into it. Yeah, no, it's funny. It's one of those things, and I'm sure it's the same thing for a lot of the people listening here. It's like when you have a family business like that, and you grow up in that environment, and you see what your parents do and you respect them for like, working hard and like helping people and the relationships they have with their, the people that they work with. I think that it really makes a big difference. And, I know for me I would not have found this field otherwise.
Well, that's awesome. I feel like, any job you do, it's about the relationships. It's just,
Absolutely.
It's the tool you use. So we use HVAC, you use it as being a CPA. So that's awesome that actually, I feel like some people it's a job, but you actually got to care about what you do. That's how you really change people's lives.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like a little bit about the name, the reason why we picked Dominion is because, I'm a firm believer in people should have control over, how they earn their income. They should have control over, their business so that, it supports their life and it supports the life that they want to live. And, that I really do see, I do see the work that I do is like that because it's something that's so fundamentally critical to businesses. You can, lose your shirt on the tax situation if it's not handled correctly. There's a lot of fear, a lot of misunderstanding that goes on around it. And it's a very high trust thing. But it really does. It comes down to those relationships, because when you're that, and I'm sure, people listening like have the same experience. Like when you're the technical professional, your client or your customer is they just have to trust you to a certain extent that you know what you're doing, that you're acting in their best interest. And so it really does come down to relationships for sure.
Well, and taxes is one of those things that most people don't educate themselves because you always hear about rich people don't pay taxes. And it's not because they, there's scum. It's just they've educated themselves that they know ways to be able to make their money work for them. So, hey, if you want to do that, then educate yourself. Don't be mad at somebody who did.
Yeah, for sure.
I started getting better. I'm not there, and I don't make that kind of money, but I've started learning some different things. But I know that you have something that really affects a lot of HV or just trades or businesses in general. Something a lot of people don't know about that you want to talk about. I'd love to hit that subject.
Yeah. So one of the things that my firm does, and we do a lot of this work for other CPA firms. I'm getting featured by like Intuit, and we're doing, a conference for them about this. But we do a lot of work in the employee retention credit space. It's something you might have heard of. There's a lot of people doing like advertising for doing this kind of work, but basically it's a tax credit. It's called the employee retention credit. It came out during the pandemic, but because there was so much confusion around the rules with it, and then there were also the programs like the PPP like rounds that were going on, a lot of people just didn't do it. And so the nice thing with this program, unlike the PPP that had a limited fund pool, it had a limited time window. This program, because Congress made it a tax credit, you still have like another year and change to go back and get it if you had missed it. And this is for, your owner operators that are listening here who, employ people with W-2s. That's who the credit's for. It's a payroll credit, functions very similar to the PPP program that happened during the pandemic.
Huh. So what are some of like the requirements for that? Is it so when you say employee retention, it's, having employees and being able to keep them through the whole process, or like, because I know for us, like, we still have the same number of employees. We maybe interchanged a couple, but we still have the same amount. Like, would that make a difference if it's not the same exact person, or?
Yeah, so the name's a little misleading. So basically how the credit works in a nutshell is, the first piece of it is determining whether or not your business is eligible. There's two ways for that. I'll just keep this really high level, and if you want to ask me more details about it, we can go into it. But basically, there's two ways a company can be eligible for the most part. It's either you had revenue discrepancies during the pandemic, or you had direct government orders that were affecting your operations. Those two factors can come into play and trigger eligibility. And so, like, let me give you an example. For a lot of HVAC businesses, if you were doing residential work in a highly restrictive state, say like California or New York, and you were restricted that you couldn't do residential HVAC work for, say, the first 2 months of the pandemic, that those 2 months you would then be eligible for this credit. And basically it's a credit based on your head counts, and it's based on how much you paid employees by wages, health benefits, and tips if you have it, but not in HVAC mostly. And so those things combine together, and it ends up being, the credit maxes out at $26,000 per employee, but it really does come down to, which quarters and which time periods you're eligible and how much you were paying in wages for people. But it doesn't matter if, your headcounts went up, your headcounts went down. It's mostly just, okay, when are you eligible for a whole quarter, for a couple months? Okay. And then during that eligibility period, who was on the payroll and how much were you paying them? And then it's a per employee calculation. But like I said, in total, it can be up to $26,000 per employee for the whole program. So you can imagine, even if you have a crew of like 10 guys, like that can add up pretty quickly if you end up being eligible for multiple quarters.
Yeah, nice. This is so. I can think of several questions based off of that. Like, one is, how do you like? So should all these people out there should just try to apply for this? Worst they're going to say is, hey, you don't qualify.
Yeah. So how the program works, it's a little weird. So unlike with PPP, where it's like you just filled out an application, and then they either accept you or deny you, because it's a tax credit, you actually need to work with somebody who's going to basically do that are you eligible calculation for you. And so you're really relying on that person's expertise to do that correctly. So you would go to somebody who's a tax professional. So like my firm does them as a specialty firm. We do them for other CPAs. Your CPA might be able to do them. I'd steer clear of people who aren't tax professionals that are trying to do this kind of work, because it's really complex. And we have an enforcement gap with the IRS. So you can have people who are kind of bad actors in the space. And then, when the IRS shows up in a couple of years, like those people are off in Aruba. So I would, work with somebody who's a licensed tax firm, and they can do that piece for you of figuring out, okay, how much are you eligible for? How is this going to impact your normal tax situation? and then doing the actual claims with the IRS, because we have to file amended payroll tax returns to get them. And then you also do have to amend your income tax returns at the same time. But, I think for most people that I talk to, like the main thing that they need to do when it comes to this program is, find a good practitioner that you trust, who's knowledgeable, who has good credentials, find that person. And then the rest of the work is really just some document collection, and then they handle the rest of it. So it's not too much on you as the business owner that you actually have to do. It's just getting some documents together for them, and just making sure that you've kind of done your homework on who you're working with.
Nice. Well, they just hired like 9 million more IRS agents, so we got more people to process this stuff now.
Yeah, it's sad. Like it kind of shows you the state of the industry, where I'm like, oh, thank God, finally the IRS got some more money, because it's just like with this program, everything has to be done on paper. It's really, their processing times were horrendous. It was a couple months ago, it was like a 9-month wait to get your credit back. Now it's better. It's like 3 to 4 month wait. But they just are so like inefficient and have so many issues over there that I'm actually grateful for it, to be honest with you. But, I'd say with the IRS situation, with this tax credit, it really comes down to, this credit is going to have, instead of the normal 3-year statute of limitations, it's got a 5-year statute of limitations with the IRS. And why is that? Because the IRS is going to inspect a lot of these. And that's not to say that people shouldn't pursue it. It's just, you have to make sure when you're working with somebody that they're reputable, that they do IRS representation, that they're used to that stuff. Because if they are, you're going to have no issues, like no problems, if you do end up having an inspection. But that's really the key piece for people. It's like, I'm sure you guys, people, your listeners are like thinking of, okay, your company versus like when you've got people that are kind of like working in the black market kind of stuff, and they don't have their licenses, and they're like trying to compete with you. And it's like, you get what you pay for, it's, it's like, there's a reason why, in my field, we have licensing, same, so I'm sure you guys definitely respect that in a way that, some business owners kind of don't get it, but, you just want to make sure you're working with somebody who's legitimate.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense with anything that you do, especially something like this. So I have a 2-part question on this. One, if you could put a number or percentage, like out of the many times you've done this, what is the percentage of people you see that are actually qualifying for it? And then, not saying you have to give, I'm not asking you to give me like your fee. Like, what is like the roundabout cost for a business owner to be able to go through this process?
Yeah. So usually, the percentage of who's eligible, honestly, like it really just comes down to your particular business's circumstances. So I would say the pieces that I tell people, if you had, the first situation is that if your revenues were uneven during the pandemic, from comparative quarter by quarter, 2019 to 2020 to 2021, if your revenues were like up and down and up and down and up and down, you very well could be eligible under that. And so you just need somebody to run the number for you. And then the other piece is, like I mentioned, an example of, in certain states, people weren't allowed to do residential work for a certain amount of time. And so things like that would end up qualifying you. So it just really depends on where you're located, and then just kind of the nature of the work that you're doing. Because some operators that I've talked to that just did, essential, they were in a state that was lowly regulated. So like Florida, they didn't have limitations on what they could do. And basically, because people were home, they were having like more HVAC work done because, they're in their houses. And so they ended up like crushing it during the pandemic. And so, they'd end up not qualifying. But, it just really depends on your company's situation. And, for most companies, because it's potentially such a valuable credit, I'd say if you haven't been formally assessed, so if your accountant hasn't looked at quarterly profit and loss statements from you, and they haven't had a specific conversation with you about, what was the nature of what was going on during the pandemic with you, with government restrictions, were you subject to anything? Those 2 conversations, if you haven't had that, it means you haven't been assessed. And that's the point where you do want to look at this, because it's, like I said, it's up to $26,000 per employee. So it can be, for the amount of time that it actually takes you as the business owner to look into it, it can be a very high ROI activity for, checking out this tax credit.
Yeah.
And then the second question that you had with the, the fee structure piece of it. I see a lot of people out in this space that charge a contingent fee. As a CPA firm, we're not allowed to do that. It's actually an IRS Circular 230 violation to charge a flat percentage. So if you see people charging flat percentages, it's probably not a good sign. For us, it really just depends on the nature of the records. So if you've got really good payroll reports where we don't have to do a lot of cleaning, because like I said, it's a per employee per paycheck calculation. It requires a lot of Excel work and a lot of cleaning. But it just depends on the quality of the records. Usually for us, the fee ends up being somewhere in the range of like 10 to 15% of the credit. But obviously if it's a really large credit, that will skew much lower. But for the most part, it just tends to be kind of in that range, but we don't charge a flat percent. It's really the nature of your records. And I would definitely, as a business owner, kind of checking this program out. If somebody's pitching you, oh, it'll just be 25% of the credit, or it'll just be, a flat 15%. And, if you don't get paid, we don't get paid. If they pitch like that, it means it's not a CPA firm. Because we're not allowed to do that. So I would watch out for that kind of language. But for the most part, and our practice is no different than other practices, we wait until the IRS pays out the claim to actually collect our fee because of, I always tell people it's much easier for me to factor a receivable than it is for them to, try to get financing and that sort of thing. So that's what we tend to do. And that's a very common practice in the field. So for the most part, for most people pursuing this credit, you're not going to have very much cash out of pocket up front to actually pursue the program, from the practitioner's side of things.
Nice. That's pretty, one thing I will say in this industry, and I don't, every single state, but I know for us and most of the people I know, we actually thrived during COVID.
Yeah, that's what I've been seeing with a lot of the HVAC cases that come to me, which is great. That's kind of the, it's
Yeah.
I do a lot of work for restaurant owners too. And it's man, those guys got whacking during the pandemic.
They definitely did. But I would say that it's not all the businesses. So everybody listening or watching this, maybe if your company did okay, but somebody else, just spread the word on this. So, this isn't, this is for everybody, any business, like Catherine just said. So if you have a friend of yours or a family member who owns a restaurant or liquors, I don't know, liquor store, barbershop, I don't know, anything else.
Yeah. And even nonprofits too. So if your church was shut down, if, you're involved in nonprofit work that was disrupted, they actually qualify as well. And I would say too, for, most people who own a business, even though with HVAC, it's not quite a hole in one the way it is for the restaurants, because headcounts tend to be high. It's one of those things where maybe you're, it's likely you're not eligible. It's likely you could be eligible. You really just need a formal assessment done. It's almost like having I've got a lump on my arm. It could be cancer. It couldn't be cancer. So you just got to go get it checked out. That's the advice I give most business owners. If you have more than 10 employees, it's worth doing a little due diligence and digging and getting on the phone with somebody and really making sure that it doesn't apply in your situation, because I'm putting out a guide for, top 5 ERC mistakes I see. And the first mistake that I see is people will just say, oh, we're not eligible, without actually looking into it. A lot of the cases that come across my desk, they're I don't think I'm eligible, but I'll just talk to you just in case. And more often than not, they actually are, once we actually dig into their situation and look at their reports and look at the documents and talk to them about what happened, more often than not that they actually are, even though they thought they weren't. So I would just not count yourself out, really have somebody go into the weeds with you and look at your documentation and, really talk through some of the questions, because, it can end up being, $100,000, $200,000. If you have a lot of employees, the employee caps, it's 100 for 2020 and 500 for 2021. So, even if you have, 100, 200 employees, and maybe you think, I'm probably not eligible at those headcounts, you got to look into this, because it, even if you're only eligible for 2 weeks, that could still be a very substantial credit.
Yeah, for sure. So, on the other side of it, how does it work? If I come to you and then we're not eligible, so obviously there's no 15% to take anything from. So how does that work?
Yeah. So what we do in the firm is we do an initial phone call. You'll do it with one of the partners, and we just talk through, okay, what was the situation for you during the pandemic? We can usually tell from that initial phone call if it seems like you're eligible. And then we'll run things like just look at your revenues and figure that out. Because I always tell people, we do so much of this work. I have a very good spidey sense of whether or not people are eligible from that initial call. And so I'm fine with me taking the risk of saying, okay, I think you're eligible. I think you very likely could be eligible. Let's take a look at everything and see if you actually are and see what it could be. And then if it doesn't pan out, it's like, I'll eat the risk on that because it's me making that judgment call, thinking whether or not, you're going to be eligible. So we don't charge anything up front for figuring out, how much the credit could be, and seeing if you're eligible, as long as there's kind of good faith there that you are interested in pursuing it in the event you are eligible, and that you would consider us to do the work. So, that's how I do it, because I'm like, it's, I'd rather me being the one that's eating that risk than push that onto, the business owner, because especially for me, it's like, I'm the one who knows where the rules are and where the bright lines are. And, ultimately, if I think somebody's eligible and they're not, that's a mistake on me, not that business owner. And so they shouldn't be paying for that. That's really on me. So that's how we've structured it at our firm. Most other practitioners are very similar. If you go to your regular tax pro who charges hourly for work, that's probably not the case. But, for us in our firm, that's how we structured it, because I just didn't want somebody to miss out on this program for, little fears or little, uncertainties about it for their situation. I'm happy to take that risk on myself just to make sure that they do take the time to try to pursue it.
Well, that's really cool of you, and that's pretty awesome. And I mean that people do that. You guys are willing to do that. Let me ask you this: why do you think it is that a lot of like businesses don't know about this? Like, how come it's not like it's publicized or whatever it is about like the PPE loan or some of the other things?
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's so weird to me because the media really picked up the PPP program, which was great because it was so limited. Like, it was such, if you didn't apply in time, you missed out. It was a limited fund pool. So if you didn't get it, like, too bad. I think the reason why this program just didn't get picked up was because it was released at the same time as PPP. There were a lot of rules that changed later on. And so the media had kind of moved on from all of it by the time the program kind of came into its full swing. And so there was just never the publicity for it the same way that the PPP got. So a lot of people just don't know about it from that. The other thing too, I would say that's different is, a lot of people, a lot of business owners that I've dealt with, they heard about the PPP either through their CPA or through their bank. And the banks were really good about going around and making sure all their customers, all their commercial line customers knew what was going on with it, and they administrated it, and they did it. For the most part, they did a really good job for what we had for information at the time. The problem with the ERC, and I think why a lot of people don't know about it, is because it's a payroll tax credit. And so, for your regular income tax CPA, a lot of them don't tend to do payroll tax work. And so they just don't see it as their realm of expertise. And then at the same time, on the payroll side of things, a lot of the payroll providers out there, I think rightly so, said, this is a tax credit. This isn't regular payroll. We're not competent to do this work. It's the CPA's job to do this because it interacts with their income tax returns. Unlike with a lot of other tax credits, this credit, we're not given forms to use to do the calculation. There's no software to use. You kind of had to really digest the tax law to actually do this work. And so you kind of have business owners stuck in the middle where it's like, unless their CPA talks to them about it or their payroll company talks to them about it, they weren't really going to hear about it. And those two parties like kind of thought that the other was going to do it. So that's a lot of the people that I talked to, who just didn't even know about the program because, their CPA just didn't talk to them about it because they don't do this kind of work. And their payroll provider, didn't talk to, or a lot of people who self-do their payroll also just didn't know about it because unless you have somebody within, in the know, it's just not in the media.
No, yeah, that's true. It makes perfect sense because, a lot of those big companies, they'll use like those big like companies like Paychecks or whatever they're called.
Paychecks or ADP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys won't do that work, like ADP, and the other thing too is some of them do the work, but, not to slight payroll companies, but in my professional experience with having to deal with people's payroll and things like that from some providers, it's like those guys have a hard enough time just getting regular payroll right. Are you going to trust them with a really big tax credit when there's a decent likelihood that you're going to get audited? Me as a business owner, like I wouldn't do that knowing what I know about, like how this stuff works. Like, the number of times I've had people pull their hair out over just regular payroll issues with their payroll company. It's like, yeah, I don't know if I would have them do, a highly technical tax credit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And and like we were talking about earlier, I see a lot of guys in our industry that, they go out to start their own business, and this is where they get caught up because they don't think about the
Yes.
taxes and the books and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of good people with the best of intentions get caught up owing the IRS a lot of money, and that's the last people that you want to owe money to.
Yeah. And, I always tell people because I do a lot of, we do a lot of strategic income tax planning work in the firm too, beyond the specialty credit work. And so we do, kind of strategic tax planning for businesses, on a very selective basis, because we usually do things like small equity arrangements for them because we help people through to sale and post sale and that kind of thing. But the key thing that I always see people, that are kind of starting from square one, like they've just left their W-2 job, like they had been moonlighting, before, and now they're just going full into it. They've, going to try to replace their income, and then they're going to try to scale and grow. The first piece that really messes people up is the taxes, because I think they don't understand, when you make that initial switch from W-2 to being self-employed, you've now gone from, your employer was handling all that kind of stuff for you, and the compliance burden was falling on them. And now when you're self-employed, like that whole compliance burden is falling on you. And unless you're doing things like making estimated tax payments and working with a tax professional to figure that stuff out during the year, you're only going to figure that out when you go to do your tax return at the end of the year, and you're going to have like a whole year's worth of taxes, and it's income taxes and self-employment taxes due all at once. And I've seen, a lot of people that go the self-employed route. That's the first piece that they, the real sting, because they're like, oh, I'll deal with the taxes later. But they don't realize, with the self-employed tax plus your income taxes, you're looking at a really significant percentage of your annual income now in this tax bill that you hadn't been kind of putting money aside or paying towards it. So yeah, that can be really nasty really quickly.
Yeah, because later comes pretty quickly, and then you're like, oh man, what the hell do I do now? And then
Yeah, and you're like, oh yeah, I gotta pay this. I have to pay last year's taxes, but like now I'm working with an accountant, and now they're telling me I gotta pay this year's taxes like now too. So now I've got like 2 years worth of taxes that I'm dealing with at once, and yeah, it gets really sour really quickly.
yeah, and I see like, and I've also seen where like some guys they go work for these new guys, and they'll be 1099 employees, and
Yeah.
they end up getting screwed because they think, oh, I'm not getting taxes taken out. Well, okay, if they're filing a 1099 on you, Uncle Sam knows. So
Oh yeah.
you're gonna have to pay for it at some point. Don't think that
Yep.
you're just getting free money. So it's
Nope.
definitely be smart about that, because yeah, the IRS, because I can say when I first started this podcast, and when I first did this, it's still for fun. I wasn't making any kind of revenue. And, once it became
hmm
a business, I just started treating it like a business because
Yep.
companies were paying me. I had to have a tax ID to be able to give to them,
hmm
and then Uncle Sam started saying, hey, buddy, HVAC Uncensored owes me this. And I
Yep.
had to try to get that figured out to be the right thing, because I didn't know, like, should I be an LLC? Should I be an S Corp? What should I, you know what I mean? I
Yep.
had to go through all that stuff and learn, because I, especially for a while there, like content creators, podcasts, stuff like that was kind of a weird realm for people like you, like
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
you didn't know what to do with those people, and like now it's kind of norm, and people know what to do with us now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say too, the biggest shift I think for people when you go from being an employee to being self-employed is realizing how much your employer was doing for compliance burden that you just didn't even really see in the background. And that things you kind of take for granted, like, just doing TurboTax and it's easy. All of a sudden now doing your taxes is this big production. And that, it's an expensive thing. If you're just having somebody just prepare your taxes and not doing any tax planning work, now it's all of a sudden this big expense to have to get all your record keeping right. and to, make sure your filings are up to date, make sure your like payroll's all done right. Because if you don't do that stuff on the front end correctly, it is like a nightmare to clean up on the back end. Like, especially with payroll stuff, if you have issues where like people are paying out on 1099s and they really should be W-2s. Like, I've been dealing with so many cases these past couple of years of state unemployment departments getting really aggressive about that and coming back to, the employer and being like, hey, you should have been W-2ing all these people. They're actually your employees. And we're going to charge you a bunch of unemployment and you cannot get off the hook on it. So like, please pay us, 5 years worth of unemployment taxes that you hadn't been paying. And those, like, once they get their teeth in, they do not let go. So that's a lot of stuff I warn people, like, it can be a mess if you don't deal with it. It is not a big deal. You don't have to self-educate yourself on all of this stuff. You just have to find a good practitioner to work with, right? It's like if you've got like cavities and, you need a root canal done, like you don't need to be going on YouTube to try to figure that out.
No.
Just find a good dentist. It's the same thing with this. Like, just find a good accountant and find yourself some good service providers and use the time that you're saving from not having to deal with that compliance burden to like going out, getting more jobs, doing quotes, like driving revenue, because you'll be happier doing that than trying to do your own TurboTax, for your first year on your own. Don't try to save money on something, that you hate, that you're probably not going to do right, that's going to take forever, when you could be doing stuff that's the work that you actually enjoy, which is driving revenue, getting jobs done, that kind of thing. So that's what I always tell people that are just starting out. Like, just plan on that you're going to have to pay for it, and, get that figured out, within the first 4 to 5 months of you operating. Put that on your to-do list of things that you just have to get sorted out before you, start earning too much revenue.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Because, I always tell people when you start a business, like, don't go out there and try to buy a brand new van and all this other stuff. Get somebody to maintain your books. Get an accountant to keep that tight. Because I've heard too many horror stories. Some of my good friends who are very good guys, almost lost their businesses and different things like that. And then you don't even know if you're actually making money. These guys are busy thinking they're making money until they actually get an accountant. The guy's like, well, you actually owe more money than you have. Like, you're not even making any. You know what I mean? So you need it on a whole bunch of different fronts. Yeah, no, that's pretty amazing. So man, I guess, we're probably like 10 minutes in, 10 minutes left. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to cover? Did I miss anything, or?
No, I think we pretty much hit everything. I tried to keep it not too like tax jargony and technical, but I'd say the one thing for people really is like, I've just been kind of this herald of like, make sure you get yourself checked out for the employee retention credit. Talk to your accountant about it. Really make sure that they've really looked at you, because I see like so many horror stories of people, like they find me through some other channel and they're like, oh yeah, my CPA said I wasn't eligible. And then we start talking and it's like, no, you're actually eligible for like a lot of this. They just didn't really look at you thoroughly. So I would say for people, take the time and get it checked out. It's something my firm does, but, start with your CPA and have a, frank conversation with them. And then, go from there. But it's one of those things where like, it can be so much money left on the table. It's like a third round of PPP. And to just like let it sit, because, it's kind of intimidating to get the documents together, and you do have to do some, unlike with the PPP where it's like, you just fill out an application and you're good. This program, there is a lot more burden on you as the business owner to make sure you're working with a good professional for it, because they really are the one doing the work for you. I think it's just one of those things where it's a really high ROI activity for any business owner to spend a couple hours and figure it out.
Yeah, well, we keep our books tight. It's almost like a daily profit and loss statement. Like, we know
that's awesome.
We know where the numbers are.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, you have to, because
you have to.
That's not something you can guess. You either know or you don't know.
Nope.
You can't leave a gray area.
Yep. Exactly. For you guys where it's so overhead heavy, like you have to have it on a daily level. Like, because if you're not having it at that detail, like money could be walking out the door and you wouldn't even know. Like, you're underbidding jobs, or you got employees who are stealing from you, or you've got, your parts costs, or especially with inflation, like it's just gotten insane. So if you're not keeping your, finger on the pulse of that P&L daily, like money's walking out the door for sure.
Well, and plus, to be able to make changes. Like, I don't want to wait till the end
Exactly.
of the month and it's like, oh, you lost money. Well, man, I wish I would have
Yeah.
known, Well, you could have
Yeah,
known if you were
exactly,
checking it
right?
more than once a month. So
Yep.
it's pretty crazy. So I see a surge of some people that came in towards the end. If you didn't see this, talking to Catherine, she is a CPA, and we were talking about a tax credit that is available to companies out there, employee retention credit. So once this goes on, rewatch it. So pretty much what we're trying to say is check to see if your company's eligible. We do know that a lot of people in our field actually thrive during COVID, but not all of them.
hmm
So if there's any
Yep.
question or you don't know and it's your owner, say something to them. Like Catherine said, see if you qualify for it. It's a phone call with your CPA, your tax professional. If you are, there could be a serious chunk of change entitled to you that could really do big things for a company right now. I know this year's been kind of goofy in certain areas. Here, we're making more profit than we've ever made, but as far as business, it's been kind of a goofy year, So
Yeah.
if you're entitled to get something like that, then hey, take it, by all means.
Mhm.
And even if you have friends or family that are in other sectors, like we said earlier, they own a restaurant, a barber shop, any kind of business, tell them as well. Guys, get the money that's entitled to you. You know what I mean? And a lot of
Yes.
people don't know that it's there. That's the whole point of Catherine doing this, is because a lot of people are unaware that there's money out there for them, these business owners, that they are unaware of.
Yeah, exactly. And all the big guys who are eligible go after these things. And I always find that it's such a shame. Like, these incentive programs are really designed for, the small businesses, the family-owned businesses, the local businesses. And those are the people who take advantage of them the least, because it's really Congress just kind of throws them out there. And then there's just unless you've got like a tax pro who has a department doing these things, you're just not going to hear about it. So definitely take the time to talk to them. And, if this isn't something that they're comfortable with or familiar with, my firm is a specialty firm that does a lot of this work for other CPAs. We've been featured by Intuit. We're going to get featured by Accounting Today. It's one of those things where it's like a third round of PPP. So don't let it just sit there.
No, for real. Well, if anybody would like to get in touch with you and your firm, Catherine, how can they do that?
Yeah, if you visit our website, it's dominiones.com. There's resources on there to learn more about the credit, learn more about us, and also a eligibility tool on there if you want to see kind of preliminarily if your company looks like they could be eligible before getting on the phone with anybody. But we're always happy to talk through situations and just make sure that you're not missing out on it. Very low pressure, just initial, 15-minute phone call to see if it's something that's worth pursuing for you.
That's really, really awesome. Well, like I told you, an hour would go by so fast, but
Yeah.
I know you're on the, it's almost 9 here. So what is that? 6 on the West
Yeah,
Coast?
it's 6. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm in California right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. California's fun to visit. I don't know if I want to.
It is fun to visit. It is, yeah. I don't know how long I will be here for. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I had fun last time. I had a lot of fun last time.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you so much for coming on, Catherine. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for educating the audience and the viewers on this, because I want to give back to the industry, and I want us to be educated. I had no idea about this. I don't know if we'll qualify, but I think it's worth taking a look at, and I highly suggest everybody else does. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. And, my experiences with people in the HVAC space, I really respect you guys as professionals and the work that you do, serving people day in and day out. And so I think, the more that I can do to help people whose lives are helping other people, like, that's great. I think that's what makes, the American economy work, and it makes the country great. Just people that are willing to, start their businesses and get out there and, help other people with the work that they do. So that's kind of the attitude that I like to take with this as well. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this thing out real fast, man. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know this is a little different than compared to some of the shows that we've had, but like I said, I always want to educate you guys. I know a lot of technicians, business owners, but it's good to know what is out there for you. I keep looking at the damn camera, wrong camera. I'm switching up here. knowing what's out there for you and what you're entitled to. So all of you guys out there, tell the owner of your company, if you're not the owner, if you're the manager or the owner, check with your CPA, check with your people, your accountant or whoever. See if you qualify for this. If you're not, then hey, like I said, no harm, no foul. But at least check. There could be a lot of money sitting there waiting for you that could really change your business right now, and it's something that you're entitled to. So by all means, you guys should definitely do that. And then also I thank Catherine for some of the amazing advice she gave. All of you guys that message us all the time, message me about wanting to start your own business, and we talk about how important it is to get an accountant and things like that. Well, you just heard it from the CPA side about how important it is to do that, because if not, you can get yourself in trouble. And, you have all these things going through your mind when you just left your company, you don't have a guaranteed paycheck, you're trying to start your company, and all these other things. Don't let an accountant be one of them. Let that be the first thing you deal with. Get that taken care of, and then get your business rolling, because your books are going to be tight, your money's going to be there, and you actually know whether you're making money or not. So, guys, great show. Two shows this week. I had one on Monday with Mr. Mike Flynn, a.k.a. Flintstone. Was an amazing show. Another amazing show tonight. I will put out the list of guests coming up next week. I'm pretty sure next week is just going to be one guest. So back to the Wednesdays. I am going to put a hangout here soon, so I have some more giveaways to do. Remember, the one prize was not claimed, the Yellow Jacket probe, so I still have those to give away. I have a Makita drill set to give away, so I will announce a giveaway here soon, so make sure you are following the podcast. The wrong camera again. Jesus. Make sure that you are following the podcast and all the social media sites so you know when that giveaway is coming up, when that hangout is going to happen, so that you guys can be here. And remember, you have to be live to win. You have to be live. That's how I'm going to start doing them. I want to give away things to the people that are actually here, participating, supporting the show and stuff like that, not the random people who only come for the giveaway. All right. So that's how we will do it moving forward. Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate your support. Remember, be safe out there. All right. We all have somebody to make it home to. We live in a crazy world. Keep your head on a swivel. All right. Make sure you make it home at the end of the day. That's the most important thing you should do. Do the little things, man. Set yourself apart from the next guy. There's so many resources nowadays for you to be the best version of you. There's no reason to say, I don't know something. If you don't know, it's because you don't want to. Between YouTube, podcast, books, whatever it is, just the internet, the interweb. There are so many resources available for you to learn something. Like I told you, I was an HVAC tech, second generation. I didn't know how to podcast. I didn't know how audio stuff worked or cameras. I learned by watching videos, YouTube videos, reading books and stuff like that. So if I can do it, trust me, you can do it. I'm nobody special. So guys, always make sure that you are the best version of you. If there's something you want in this life, God damn it, go get it. All right. I want all of you to get whatever it is that you want. All right. Remember, I am always here to help you. I don't know everything, but if I can help you in any way, I'm always here to do that. You can email me, hvacuncensored@gmail.com. Direct message me on any of the social media platforms, and I will always try to respond to you as fast as I can. I normally say at least give me like 24 hours because I respond to all that stuff personally, just like I do most of the comments on the different platforms. All right, great shows coming up. I appreciate you guys. Thank you to my moderators for being in here. Remember to go check out my friends over at the Service Business Mastery Podcast. They did a great show today. And that's about it, man. I love you guys. Stay safe. And until next time, peace.
Thanks for listening to the HVAC Uncensored Podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Instagram, or email us anytime at hvacuncensored@gmail.com. Now, get back to work. Shut this down. The views and opinions shared on the HVAC Uncensored Podcast may not necessarily be the views and opinions of our sponsors or guests.
Bye, you son of a bitch.